Turn that monstrosity off before I call the sheriff." That's how it started. Not with a friendly knock on the door, not with a neighborly text. No, it started with Linda Fairchild, our HOA president, standing in the middle of the cul-de-sac in her pink satin robe and foam curlers, screaming like the siren itself was plotting against her. And honestly, in a way, it was. People poured out of their houses like ants after rain, clutching coffee mugs and shielding their eyes from the Saturday sun. You could smell bacon grease still clinging to some of their pajamas. The noise was unbearable, a metallic wail so loud it rattled the mailbox flags. Dogs barked, kids covered their ears. Mr. Drummond from across the street looked like he was having war flashbacks, muttering, "Air raid, air raid," even though he was only 65 and had never served a day in combat. And there I stood, frozen in my driveway, wondering if I'd just made the dumbest or smartest decision of my life. Let me rewind for a second. The siren hadn't come cheap. 60 grand. You could buy a luxury SUV for that money, or remodel a kitchen with marble counters, or pay 2 years of HOA dues up front to keep Linda off your back. But I didn't want an SUV, and I sure as hell didn't want marble. I wanted a warning system, something that cut through silence like a blade. Tornadoes, chemical leaks, you name it, stuff the county kept telling us wasn't likely, but in the same breath told us to be prepared. Prepared how? With Linda's emergency plan binder, which was mostly laminated checklists about not leaving trash bins visible on non-pickup days? Please. When the delivery truck rolled up with the siren, a beast taller than my garage, painted firehouse red, I could already feel the neighborhood's collective gasp from behind their blinds. Installation was a week-long circus. A crane had to lower the mast into place, contractors bolted the thing into a concrete pad, and every time the workers fired up their drills, Linda was there on the sidewalk scribbling violations on her clipboard like it was scripture. She didn't wait long to make her stance official. 3 days after the siren went up, I got the first letter. HOA stationery, gold crest at the top, words so passive-aggressive they practically dripped off the page. Dear resident, the installation of an unsanctioned emergency siren device is in direct violation of Bylaw 14.7 regarding neighborhood noise and visual harmony. Please remove said device immediately to avoid daily fines and further legal action. Legal action over a siren. I should have been intimidated. Instead, I laughed, taped the letter to my fridge, and underlined the part about visual harmony. As if Linda's plastic flamingos, faded to the color of raw salmon, were harmonious. But here's the thing. Once the siren was real, once it loomed over the cul-de-sac like a watchtower, people couldn't stop talking. At first, it was polite little jokes at the mailbox, questions about whether it could play music on the 4th of July. Then it turned sour. Waste of money. Attention-seeking. Looks like a prison yard now. Gossip spread faster than crabgrass, and at every HOA meeting, Linda fanned the flames with speeches about protecting property values from industrial clutter. Still, I kept quiet. Let them mock. Let them roll their eyes. What they didn't know was that the siren wasn't just ornamental. I had it wired to the county's emergency alert system. One phone call, one trigger, and it would blast through the neighborhood like Judgment Day itself. Which brings me back to that Saturday morning. The county had scheduled a test, a simple 10-second pulse to check the system's reach. I warned people, posted it in the Facebook group, even printed flyers for the community board near the pool, but nobody read it. Or maybe they did and chose to ignore it. So when that first shriek split the sky, nobody thought test. They thought end. Linda was the loudest, shrieking almost in harmony with the machine. "This is harassment. This is terrorism in a robe community," she yelled, stumbling into the street. Somewhere in the chaos, Mrs. Green fainted onto her azalea bushes. Kids cried like it was the apocalypse. And me? I just stood there, pretending to look confused, hands shoved deep in my pockets so nobody could see I was smiling. Because here's the truth. They could mock me, fine me, threaten me all they wanted. But now they knew. Now they'd felt it in their bones, the sound that meant everything could change in a heartbeat. When the siren finally cut off, silence didn't return so much as collapse, heavy and suffocating. You could hear the drip of a garden hose, the buzz of a single cicada. All eyes turned on me. Linda's cheeks burned scarlet. She pointed her clipboard like a weapon and hissed, "This is not over. By next month's meeting, that monstrosity will be gone. Do you understand me?" I didn't answer. I just looked at her, then up at the towering red siren, and back at her again. For the first time since I'd moved into Maplewood Estates, I wasn't the one on trial. She was. And as neighbors shuffled back inside, shaking their heads, whispering about fines and lawsuits, I realized something that made my stomach knot with both fear and satisfaction. The siren wasn't just a machine anymore. It was a line in the sand, and Linda Fairchild had just stepped right over it. "You don't belong in this neighborhood if you think you're above the rules." That was Linda Fairchild's voice, sharp enough to slice through the buzzing ceiling fans of the Maplewood Estates clubhouse. Her words ricocheted around the wood-paneled room, bouncing off the folding chairs and landing squarely on me like a guilty verdict. I could feel every eye in that hall drilling into my back, waiting for me to break. Sweat prickled along my collar, but I wasn't sure if it was from the July heat or the fact that Linda had just declared war in public, clipboard in hand like a gavel. The room smelled of coffee gone bitter in its styrofoam cups, mixed with the cloying sweetness of the lemon bars someone had set out on the snack table. Ceiling fans creaked overhead, doing little to stir the thick, swampy air. The HOA meeting was supposed to be routine budget approvals, landscaping bids, maybe a reminder about trash bins not left out overnight. Instead, it was a firing squad, and I was the only one in the chair. Now, let me back up. 2 weeks after the siren test, Linda had gone quiet. Not the kind of quiet where she gave up, but the kind of quiet where you knew she was in her study, drafting something that would look official and smell like a trap. Sure enough, a bright white flyer landed on every doorstep, sealed with the HOA crest and printed in bold. Special meeting. Discussion of bylaw. Amendment 18.9, Noise and Safety Devices. She might as well have called it the Destroy the Siren Act. The bylaw she proposed was simple on paper but venomous in intent. Any unapproved mechanical or electronic device capable of producing sound above 80 decibels is prohibited within Maplewood Estates. Immediate removal is required upon written notice, with fines imposed for non-compliance. 80 decibels. That was about the volume of a blender. My siren clocked in at 120. Translation: I was toast. So when I walked into the clubhouse that Tuesday evening, I already knew the script. Linda would stand up front in her crisp white blouse, pearls gleaming under the fluorescent lights, her hair pulled so tight you could have bounced a quarter off it. She'd present her case with the smug patience of a teacher correcting a misbehaving child. And the neighbors, my neighbors, would nod along, relieved to be on her good side. And that's exactly what happened. Linda opened the floor with her trademark smile, one that never quite reached her eyes. "Ladies and gentlemen," she said, "this bylaw isn't about targeting anyone. It's about protecting our peace, our homes, our property values." She let the words hang there, like baited hooks. Hands shot up. Mr. Drummond went first, grumbling that the siren nearly blew his hearing aids out. Mrs. Green wrung her hands, saying her grandchildren were traumatized by the noise. Someone else muttered about how it looked like a prison tower. The accusations flew thicker than mosquitoes by the lake, exactly as Linda had planned. Finally, she turned to me. "Would you like to explain," she asked, voice honeyed with fake courtesy, "why you believe the rest of us should endure this device?" I swallowed hard, feeling the sweat bead at my temples. Dozens of faces stared back, faces that used to wave politely when I mowed my lawn, that used to chat about football games and weather at the mailbox. Now they looked like a jury, already convinced of my guilt. I cleared my throat. I bought the Siren for one reason: safety. You all think it's a vanity project, but when disaster strikes, and it will, you'll wish we had a way to warn people faster than an Amber Alert or a text message. I'm not trying to disturb anyone's peace. I'm trying to protect it. A ripple of murmurs. Some skeptical, some curious. For a split second I thought maybe, just maybe, I'd crack the wall Linda had built. But Linda pounced. "Safety," she snapped. "If you truly cared about safety, you would have sought approval from this board before erecting a monstrosity in the middle of our neighborhood. This isn't about safety. It's about ego." Her words hit their mark. Laughter bubbled from the back row. My face burned hot enough to rival the Siren's paint job. I wanted to shout back, to tell them about the county connection, the real emergencies this thing could save us from. But the words jammed in my throat, smothered by the weight of Linda's smirk and the chorus of nodding heads. The meeting spiraled. Voices rose, fingers pointed. Someone accused me of lowering property values. Someone else demanded I be fined immediately. My defenses, shaky as they were, collapsed under the mob's momentum. By the end, the motion to adopt Linda's new bylaw passed with a thunderous majority. I left the clubhouse humiliated, cornered, my shoes sticking slightly to the linoleum from someone's spilled lemonade. Outside, the air was still heavy, the night sky bruised with thick clouds rolling in from the west. I glanced up, uneasy. Lightning flickered faintly in the distance, too far to hear, but close enough to make me wonder. Nobody inside that hall realized what was brewing above us. Nobody cared about the storm on the horizon. They were too busy congratulating Linda on her victory, already picturing the Siren dismantled and carted away. But as I walked home, the wind picked up, hot and restless, and I couldn't shake the feeling that their little victory had come at the worst possible time, because storms don't wait for bylaws. The Siren wailed, and for the first time, no one laughed. It split the night like a jagged blade, vibrating through windows, rattling dishes and cupboards, sending every living soul in Maplewood Estates bolting upright in bed. Lights flicked on across the cul-de-sac, but only for a heartbeat. Then the power cut. Darkness swallowed the neighborhood whole. The only thing left was the scream of the machine everyone had mocked, hated, even tried to outlaw. And there I was, standing in my front yard barefoot, watching panic take root in every house like wildfire. I'd warned them. I'd told them this wasn't about ego or vanity, but people don't want to believe in danger until it knocks down their door. This time, it wasn't knocking. It was pouring in. Earlier that evening, Linda had been celebrating. She'd stood at the front of the HOA clubhouse like a general after victory, sipping her Chardonnay from a plastic cup, smiling for the crowd of neighbors who congratulated her on finally putting an end to that ridiculous Siren. The bylaw had passed, the fines were coming, and she was practically glowing with triumph. I remember walking past her on my way out, hearing her hiss, "Better start shopping for earplugs because next month that thing is history." But the storm that had been brewing didn't wait for her paperwork. Around midnight, I smelled at first a sharp metallic tang in the air, like burnt wires and chlorine, the kind of smell that prickles the inside of your nose. Then came the news, barely a blip before the cell towers died, a chemical spill up by the freight line, less than 3 miles from us. Evacuation order issued, county systems overloaded, phones buzzing one moment, then dead silence the next. That's when the Siren lit up the sky. I ran to the switch myself, hands shaking as I triggered the system, the ground rumbling beneath me as the horn roared to life. My chest vibrated with the force of it, and I prayed the sound carried far enough, fast enough to wake every soul in our little slice of suburbia. The reaction was chaos. Front doors burst open. Neighbors stumbled into the street, clutching kids, flashlights, pets. The smell thickened, sour and metallic, coating our throats. panic buzzed louder than the cicadas that usually sang at night. I heard Mrs. Green scream, "What's happening?" and someone else shout, "It's the end, isn't it?" Linda appeared then, striding down her driveway in a silk nightgown, hair undone, fury written across her face. Even as the air burned in our lungs, she couldn't resist. She jabbed a finger toward me and spat, "This is your fault. You're scaring everyone." But then the first evacuation truck roared past the entrance of our neighborhood, loudspeakers crackling. "Chemical spill. Evacuate immediately. Follow the convoy to Route 19. The color drained from Linda's face. In that instant, all the mocking, the fines, the bylaws, every ounce of her control evaporated. The neighbors who once rolled their eyes at my siren now clung to it like a lifeline. The sound wasn't noise anymore. It was salvation. I shouted directions over the wail, guiding families to pile into cars, telling them where to go. Some hugged me in a daze, others just nodded, wide-eyed, but all of them moved with urgency. Every glance shot at the siren was different now. Not disdain, not annoyance, but gratitude. Desperate, terrified gratitude. And Linda? She froze. She stood in the cul-de-sac as if glued to the pavement, her clipboard nowhere in sight, her pearls hanging loose around her neck. She looked at me, then at the towering red siren shrieking against the sky, and for the first time since I'd moved here. She didn't have a single word to say. The irony was cruel. The bylaw she'd fought so hard to pass meant nothing in the face of real disaster. Rules couldn't stop poison in the air. Regulations couldn't carry children to safety. As the siren cut off 30 minutes straight of bone-rattling warning silence fell heavy, but not peaceful. It was the silence of an emptied neighborhood, engines revving in the distance, headlights trailing toward the highway. Only a few of us remained, waiting for the stragglers, scanning the horizon where faint plumes of chemical smoke were rising like specters. I turned back toward Linda. Her arms hung limp at her sides. The night wind caught her robe, whipping it around her like tattered wings. She didn't look furious anymore. She looked small, exposed, and she stared up at the siren she'd tried so hard to kill, eyes wide, jaw trembling. I couldn't tell if it was fear or shame on her face. Maybe both. But one thing was certain. The neighborhood would never see her the same way again. Because when silence meant death, the siren became our only voice. And somewhere beyond those dark clouds, I knew this wasn't over. Not for the neighborhood, not for me. And definitely not for Linda Fairchild.